Hello, everybody, and welcome. We are back with Let's Remember Suikoden 3. This is probably going to be the last segment of Chris's chapter. For Chapter 2, the village of Ch.2 is under attack, and bad things are happening. I did a little bit of stuff off-screen, just so that we could get that done, so you're going to see some party members in my party, and you're going to be like, when did they get there? Don't worry, you didn't miss anything except for everything, and I just decided not to show everything. There's a lot of characters in this game. I honestly don't need the extra teammates here, except for the fact that Lizard Clan enemies have a really nasty tendency to get critical hits, and that will knock you out really fast. And I don't want to deal with it, so I have Nei, Topo, and Shabon with me, and they are the minstrels that we saw from earlier in the game. So that's kind of nice. I was like, hey, remember these people? We can use them later, and lo and behold, we can. And so, like, haha, in big battles, I'll be able to use some earth magic and things like that, but really it's just, I just need to, like, those folks are weak. They're gonna get hurt, so I just need to make sure that they don't do too much. They're just gonna sort of act as my support, which is great, right? Little kid heading into battle, beating up the crap out of she's done. Oh my gosh. That was painful for me to watch. So we'll have some buffs, and we'll be okay in the next fight, hopefully. I mean, my character, I've leveled up Chris enough to the point where she's going to parry and she's going to dodge a fair amount. Her attack is okay. See, she guarded there. She's probably the most robust character I have, even including any party members from Ghetto's party right now. But, I just don't want to really deal with too much crap. You can see that those fellas leveled up quite a bit. Shabon not as much because she got knocked the fuck out. But now we're going to move forward, and Percival's going to join us, and we are going to have a nice and wonderful good duel and confrontation up near the windmill that plays into the point I've been trying to make ever so elegantly. Excuse me. That Ch.2 and everything sort of following after it is this real sort of transformative moment for Chris. She has two sort of moments where it happens, and it's here where she is going to not really back off from her duties, but where she's going to be introduced to ideas and concepts and other things that sort of force her to refine her understanding of her duty. And then from there, it's just going to build once she sort of learns more about her family. When I say that she's sort of refining her ideas here, it's going to be because she's going to have to reconcile her desire to sort of understand what happened to her father with her desire to be a soldier. And that's something that happens, or that sort of is challenged a little bit more in this segment for her, and then later on with one other really key moment. The point being that, well, a lot of Chris's story is about, again, enacting that embodied, performative ideal of sort of a leader of masculinity and things like that. In doing that, she sort of exposes herself to a more healthy way of sort of thinking about things. We must somehow find time to Let's see what's going on here. Nash is going to come up. I think we can fight Shiba, but... So he just distracts him into saying an introduction, and we can skip the Shiva fight. Shiva. It's not Shiva. So we can just skip that fight. That's interesting. I didn't ever really know that. Usually I pick the first option. All right, so let's see what's going to happen here. So we head up towards that windmill, which is where we want to be, and there's I wonder how to phrase it. So there's someone in this story super important to Chris, and we've sort of danced around it, but we'll sort of see it when it comes up here, and that person is Jimba. And sort of why does he have that armor? How are they going to face off? And so here's Jimba. And it's sort of... We're slowly filling in those gaps and getting to the point where Chris is going to confront relics of her past or things that are connected to her past. Here we can already see too that she's refining her idea of what it means to be herself, right? I'm not a hero, I'm not the White Maiden, I'm just one knight protecting Zexin. Other people don't think that way, but that's the way that she wants to see it, and so her reputation precedes her. And we have this sort of this moment here. I know the name Wyatt Lightfellow. Then you can tell me about the armor in your village and the pentacle that a carrion boy brought to my house. Are you saying you killed my father? What if I did? Are you going to avenge his death? So this is that question of, okay, so what does Chris really want? All right, she wants to get back everything that she lost, but she had already given up so much just by sort of following her father's footsteps in order to find her father, and instead it leads her into conflict with probably the one person who can just tell her anything about what's going on. And we enter into that abstracted dual space again, which is a nice place for sort of taking larger conflicts and shrinking them down. So this is the conflict of Chris searching for her father, right? And like, not Chris versus her father, Chris searching for her father, right? Sort of versus the ideal of what her father is, and that's represented in Jimba, who has a connection there. And so what did he say? We'll defend. Alright, not bad. Okay. Defense again, right? I was gonna say, that sounds like a death blow thing or an attack thing. Alright. And I think, you know, if somebody's saying, hey, I'll finish this quickly, that's another death blow type deal, huh? And so you see that little strange thing down below that goes back and forth where you get the exclamation or not. It shows which character has an advantage or a disadvantage. And that sometimes can alter the rock, paper, scissors, but not too much. And I don't really know entirely how it all works. But I do know that it is, it sort of functions as a way to alter those things. The game's never entirely clear on how it works. The rock, paper, scissors just works. And then there's the slight touches that the advantage, disadvantage gauge can build. It's sort of like a momentum thing, right? So he's going to attack, but fuck that. I'm going to do this. We're going to do okay. And there's that interesting thing of Jinba sort of saying, you deserve to lead this. Your father would be proud. And it's that question of, what the hell do you know about the father? And it's that confrontation there. When I say that Ix is this big moment for Chris, it's that she is confronted with something from the past. And she has to make this choice. If you want to find out about your father, you must find the Flame Champion. So she has a choice between her personal duties, or her professional duties, her duties as a soldier, or this personal duty to find her father. And all of this sort of coalesce with Ghetto's chapters in ways that we will see. Everything will sort of merge together. If there's overlap between two characters, besides just the raw conflict that comes between Chris and Hugo, Chris and Ghetto intersect in the sense that they're both sort of called to find out more about the Flame Champion for reasons that are probably a little bit more personal than Hugo, right? Hugo sort of does it because that's his thing to do as a protagonist, is that he's going to find out more about the Flame Champion, find out more about how to resist Harmonia and Zexin and all these things. The Flame Champion is this idea for him to embody. For Chris and for Ghetto, it's something to protect, a past to protect. And for Chris, it's a secret to uncover. But it all falls upon this single individual, the Flame Champion, and sort of going from there, right? Look, they argue over her again a little bit, too. Even in the face of things like that. Like, who was that man? They're not talking about Jinba, they're talking about... they're talking about Nash, who has somehow just disappeared right the fuck away, right? Not too ceremonious either. It just sort of happens, right? It's just Nash was there, Nash was not. All right. So I want to get to the end of this chapter, but I'm also thinking there is a another character that I could recruit for now, at the very least. Let's see if this store... What is it? These are appraisal stores. No, I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to... I'm going to worry about recruiting other people later on, because I don't need to right now. So let's get out of here. And sort of the rest of this chapter is sort of dealing with the fallout of what's going on. And that question again of Chris wants to do one thing, but her duty is pulling her another way, and what choice does she make? I could spend all sorts of time walking around and recruiting characters, but I don't want to. And again, little moments aren't, right? This was Percival's home. right? And just having that small moment of him reflecting upon the damage to his home means something, right? Because these are characters that we need to spend time with, and in time, part with too. Not to telegraph Chris's decision too much, right? But we sort of see what's happening, right? Or what's going to be sort of happening down the road. Like, where is she going to fall on that spectrum? Well, just for the sake of a story, she's not going to say, well, I guess my option is to do nothing but fulfill my duty. No, she's going to take that risk to find out more about herself. Right? And actually, let's just attack some of these guys for the heck of it. Look at everybody else on horseback, and then Nay, not quite on horseback. By that I mean, not at all on horseback. I'll have to figure out when is the best time to do a lot of recruiting. I think it might be when most of the stories just like flat out super converge. That seems to be the most sensible thing to me. I like the Ch.2 segment because it keeps the momentum of things up fairly quick. The sort of the fight at the lizard, clan at the Great Hollow doesn't do too much other than sort of further that story of, eye for an eye in a simple way, and it ties into the larger politics a bit. But the more interesting thing and the more effective thing is to see the Grasslanders also participate in an act of pretty large scale and egregious violence, right? It can't be the same scale as the Caria incident, right? The Caria incident is this thing where it's like, well, there's a lot of involvement there with us. I took the wrong turn. There's a lot of involvement there. All the chapters sort of build towards it. Right, or everybody's chapter 1 builds towards that as their sort of end point. Ch.2 is a little smaller and less conspicuous because we only see it through the lens of Chris's chapters. But it helps to have all these sides of the conflict sort of involved in questionable things. So Ch.2 isn't as dramatic as the Caria incident, but it is enough to sort of say, like, well, everybody's giving in to sort of their violent demons, right? It's not just, it's not as one-sided or as simple as we might think. And we already knew it was complicated because we've been playing through Ghetto's chapters, which explicitly show that there's a third party complicating things. But here we do get to see that there are people, when left to their own devices, the Grasslanders will still be like, well, we're going to attack a town. We need to pay back what we lost. The game doesn't dwell too much on sort of cyclical violence or anything like that, but the story just sort of has it happen as a natural consequence of everything else. There's not a lot of pontificating, for instance, like with the Ch.2 attack. There's not a lot of, hey, this is for Caria, blah, blah, blah. It's more just now these violent things just happen. And we sort of, they build and build, right? And what this game does very well, I think, is that it has a good proper sense of scale in terms of like moving upwards from, okay, this is a local isolated conflict, okay, some outside forces getting involved, okay, now things are spreading, okay, now this is a war, like a straight up like big war between multiple parties. And we get to see that growth bit by bit. And so we head through here, I believe, to the courtyard. Where should I go? Oh no, probably to the room. Yeah, to Chris's room. And we'll sort of see what's going on and get to the conclusion of this chapter. This took a little longer than I thought. I might not have time to sit and play through. I wanted to do Hugo's chapter today as well, but believe it or not, these recordings take some time. But I do greatly enjoy the fact that things sort of are picking up. Right, and I say that every time, but I mean, like, it keeps on building. This game has that sense of, you know, watching a brush fire in the distance and seeing things slowly get engulfed in more and more flames. And the thing with us is that we're just really party to and aware of the systems and the individuals and the emotions and the politics that sort of spread the fires of war. And I think there aren't many series that do it as well as Suikoden. And there's that tug and pull, right? What do I want? If I am where I am to begin with because I'm chasing the legacy of my father and I have the chance to actually learn more about who he was, then why not? And we still have those nasty reminders. The council and all this politicking, they claim to have no knowledge of the attack. They are split on a proposal of allying with Harmonia. Right? It's all sort of a show, right? And it's this thing where it's so interesting. Zexen interests me in the sense that it is such a militarized space, but only because it's this highly economized space, if that makes sense. It's like it is a bustling trade center. It needs all this protection, but that protection manifests and moves outwards into border skirmishes with natives. And it just gets very sort of complicated. And then sort of, hey, we want to acquire more land, or whatever the motivations of the council might be. Those motivations are economic too. Like, why would we ally with Harmonia? Well, they can get us more wealth or things like that. And we have all of this stuff going on while we are also dealing with Chris's personal conflict, right? Which is just right here. What shall I do? The man told me that my father is dead, but in my heart, I do not believe him. I must know the truth. My job as a captain does not allow me to forego the needs of my people to pursue my own selfish desires. And Salome cuts through that, right? You're being a little too hard on yourself. You need to take time for yourself. Everyone feels a sense of duty. Everyone is here, and we're here of our own accord, willing to sacrifice our lives for Zexen. None of us thinks this duty as our only driving force, right? So the problem is that, like, Chris does see it as her only driving force because it's the only thing that she has in her life. Well, I need to be a soldier. Well, I need to be a soldier in order to be close to my father. I need to be a soldier in order to better live up to the standards of my people. I need to be a soldier because that's what is what is expected of me. Salome comes in and says, like, hey, some people are just soldiers because they want to protect their families or they want to do this or this. And, hey, you need to take care of your shit. And he says, hey, when you don't appear at breakfast tomorrow morning, hint, hint, we'll say that our brave captain has gone off on a plan to infiltrate the grasslands. And this is a good sense of... Salome is sort of a distant figure compared to some of the other knights, but it's this idea of something of a confidant for Chris, right? Of just saying, hey, you are putting yourself on an incredibly high standard. And it's noteworthy that when Salome does it, he doesn't try to tell Chris what to do, if that makes sense. He already knows what Chris will do. And he just sort of accepts it and says, hey, that is your decision. And that's that. Okay, so I know we're near the end. But I think we're not going to end it here. I just need to figure out where to go. Where do I go again? Oh, this might be really esoteric. But I think, not too esoteric, I think I just need to go to my room. Right? So here we go. But the strange thing here is just like, what do I do in my room? The game's not really good about telling you. So you just kind of fuck about with stuff until something happens. But right, it's like, haha. So for me to progress here, I need to check this bookcase, which I wouldn't really have much of a reason to do. But hey, behind it, hidden bookcase, behind hidden bookcase, or whatever, Nash. And you're just like, what the fuck? Like, they couldn't just have him show up in the room or be there while you enter, right? This is that thing I'm talking about where this game doesn't really convey how to progress very clearly sometimes. And maybe it was a sound thing, I don't know. When I record, sometimes I don't always have all the sound, so maybe I missed it. But here it's just like, oh, by the way, interact with this random part of the level, or the space, and then we will find our way to progress. It feels a little at risk of turning a noun into a verb that doesn't quite work. It feels a little ex machina-y, right? Where it's like, okay, Chris is trapped in this position of paralysis, right? And what does the game do? Well, it offers up the god, Nash, metaphorically, on a crane and just sort of drops him into her lap and says, I can be your guide to find the flame champion, right? It's a little convenient, and the way that it's handled isn't really great, but, whatever. And then we go from there. And here's this nice thing that's going to happen too, is it's, hey, in order to sort of visually signify this shift between Chris, who is bound to her duty to her country, and then Chris, who is bound to her personal, or not bound to, but at least highly concerned for her personal questions or things like that. We have this moment where she's just going to, hey, I'm going to take off my armor and leave it behind. And that's a nice, very simple but effective signifier of sort of Chris now compared to Chris before and where her focus is, right? And also like she lets her hair down, right? Things like that. Right? The image of Chris on the road here is very different than the image of Chris sort of encased in armor. There's something more natural, more loose, more honest, more liberated here. And some of that is just clothing. But that image makes a lot of sense in the context of what the story is trying to do, which is nice. I enjoy it. And Nash has joined the 108 stars, which doesn't really mean much right now, but will. So let's get the hell out of here, get to the end of the chapter, and just enjoy ourselves. And then we'll do Hugo next, and we'll keep on moving. I've definitely decided, if it wasn't clear from the beginning of this, to not really show many of the recruitments, if any of them. I don't find that the subplots and side stories here are as interesting as some of the other Suikoden games. I mentioned it before, but Suikoden 2 has a great segment involving the Howling Voice Guild, and they are just... that is just interesting stuff. Where am I going? Where am I going? Where am I going? Here we go. We're totally heading... not this way. This can't be it. This is where we came from? Yeah, that's what I thought. But that game had a whole subplot where, like, two rival assassin mercenary gunners were trying to find each other, and, like, there were gun duels and all this other cool shit. And I'm not saying that this game doesn't have that. There's some really nice subplots that exist in the game. But they are not as... They sort of exist within their own bubble a little bit more than I think that the side quests in the other Suikoden games did. Those felt like they were integrated a little bit more into what you were doing. Particularly, part of the reason behind that is that from an early point in those games, you're gathering allies, right? You end up becoming key, the leader of armies pretty quickly in those games. Here, the lead up to those moments, to the sort of periods in the game where recruitment sort of makes the most narrative sense, takes place after multiple chapters of playing as three different characters, sort of recruiting people on the sly or not. And there's something about that kills the ebb and flow of sort of the ebb and flow of character recruitment and side questing in a way that is a bit of a problem. Not as obtrusively a problem as something like the way, how much the sort of the way that the oh god, I can't talk. Oh gosh. The way the war segments don't quite follow up with the aspirations of the game's like narrative goals. Here the only major problem that occurs from, hey, recruitment doesn't feel natural until a certain point, is that maybe you'll be under-leveled for a little bit. And then also it has the added side effect, somewhat unfortunate side effect, of making more characters in this game feel extraneous than in other games. We still have plenty of characters that join us automatically, but in other games, I always felt like there was a bit more of a pressing need to recruit. So, for instance, in Suikoden 5, you play as a prince whose mother and father are killed, and whose, your sister is held hostage by the bad guys as sort of a bartering chip, but you are trying to put together a rebel army to oppose them. This group of people who have taken over the throne, these usurpers. And that drive to recruit characters is felt pretty quickly from the start, because once that major inciting incident of, your family has been killed, or all of this stuff has happened, once that moment has passed, and it doesn't take too long. I mean, it's an RPG, so like 4 hours in or something like that. Once that happens, it makes sense to just constantly want to recruit allies, because that sort of makes sense for your character. It's like the logical thing for your character to do. Here, like, running around as Ghetto or as Chris and sort of gathering allies for a large army that you don't know you're going to have yet is a very strange thing to do. And as a result, you tend to feel like the two things are detached or not as related to each other as they could be. I think there were probably better ways to integrate character recruitment into the broader narrative of the game. Or at least to make it make sense sooner. But it sort of stumbles in that regard, or this title does. Regardless, I mean, I'm playing this for a reason. I think it is a very good game. But those are some of the sticking points. Some strange... sort of an inability to sort of meet up with the aspirations of the goals of things. Also, interesting thing here, like Salome and Nash know each other. They know that Nash is doing that. Right. And it's this thing of I'm getting distracted because I was talking about one thing and then not. This game has goals when it comes to talking about war that it's not able to do so with some of the other things, like the systems that portray war, and then also with recruitment, the larger systems of like gathering allies doesn't really flow in this segment, or this game as well as other games is all I'm trying to say. That is Chris's Chapter 2. I like that chapter quite a bit. Chris always gives me a lot to talk about. I know I rambled a lot during this chapter, and most of these videos. But it's honest rambling, right? I wouldn't ramble if I didn't feel like there was plenty to talk about, and there is. So next time, we will probably not do Thomas. We will try and go and we will do Hugo, which will be exciting. For now, though, thank you for watching. I'll be putting these out over the next few days. We'll get to Hugo pretty soon. And thank you. I'm so excited to do this. I'm, again, sorry if I'm rambling, blah, 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 blah. But it's fun. It's so exciting. And I hope that you enjoy this. If you enjoy this, let me know. If you really want to have any cool stuff happen, you can become a patron on Patreon, and you can actually sponsor a Let's Play series. So I will play a series, like a game, all the way through, doing all of this fun crit for any game that you choose. But that's the most... I won't be selfish and plug that again. But I will see you around next time. We'll play as Hugo. So, bye!